think we got 3 o'clock.
You have to hit 3 of mine. Ready?
That,
I call a workshop of April 1st, 2025. Roll call.
Brian Parker,
Here.
Kurt Oppenbacher,
Here.
Dale Olson,
Here.
Charles Kimball,
Here.
Patty Chapel.
Here. Did you guys hear me?
yep.
Okay, good.
Staff.
And staff.
Kyle Rodman.
Wendy McKay,
Mark Berman.
Kelly Strange, Alicia Burgess, Sarah Klein.
Rob Roder.
Rob Courier.
Mitch Wagner.
Hey, thank you. We don't have any.
We have a couple of
Oh.
guests on the line as
Oh.
well. Yeah, Scott Bauer and Stacy Maskey, our financial advisor and bond counsel.
Mhm.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Are there any changes to the agenda? Timeline?
None from the staff.
Okay. So, bond issuance discussion.
Okay, so we have a resolution toward the end of the agenda, but wanted to make sure that we had time to discuss this with our partners here online. So I don't know, Sarah, if you want to come up and we can just give a real brief overview of where we're at in the process. We can follow up on a couple of the questions that we debated last time and just remind everyone some of the decisions that we've made. And I think we got some scenarios in here, is that right, Sarah?
Yes.
Yep. So it looks like we've decided on the $40 million principal amount. That was a good discussion previously. Thanks for engaging on that. I think it's the right one. It gives us enough flexibility just to respond in the event that FEMA does or doesn't come in. The next real big decision is going to be the term length. So Sarah and I yesterday looked at the couple scenarios, the 20 versus 25 years, and that's what you see on the screen here. Both of these are what we call wrapped, so they're flat with our existing debt service, trying to just keep a constant debt service payment over the remaining years that we have. And the big thing here is, there's a difference in the total debt service, or essentially the total interest that we would pay between the two. And it's between that, you can see 75.2 million and 63.2 million. So, a sizable amount, but it's also over a 20 to 25 year time frame. So it's a long-term investment. The numbers that we looked at, Sarah and I plugged in the debt service under each one. And if you look at the line here that shows aggregate 2027 to 2050 debt service, it's between a $4.4 million total payment and a $4.9 million total payment. It's about $500,000 per year. So about $500,000 every year that we would need to fit within our debt service coverage and other ratios that we track. We think we can do it under either one, relatively comfortably. We looked at our last multi-year forecast that we put together with the budget, and it showed that, we have plenty of room in both scenarios. I think adding it all up, Sarah and I are probably inclined to lean toward the 25-year scenario for a couple of reasons. One would just be the additional headroom it might give us if we do a future borrow. Could be for a number of different reasons, but having a little more room on the debt service for some type of additional borrowing could be helpful. And I think, we also had that conversation about matching asset life better, and what we're going to be spending money on is really 40 to 50 years of life, and having a slightly longer time frame could help. The arguments the other way, of course, are, we would pay more interest over the time frame. We don't know what the next, several years or even the next 10 years are going to hold. We'll have a chance to refinance at that 10-year mark, one way or the other if we would like to. And one just point about that are the 2021 bonds that we took out, or the private financing, that has that 15-year balloon payment, which kind of lines up with if we did a new financing right now, that 10-year window when we can refinance the new 2025 bonds. So there's a chance in 10 years to do some refinancing, which could mean either one of these scenarios may end up looking different down the road. So long story short, from the staff side, I think we're about even in terms of which direction we would go with these, maybe with a slight recommendation toward the 25-year if we had to choose. But ultimately, this is gonna be a board decision and we can support it either way. This can work with our financials either way.
Agreed. And the resolution also is written so that, you know, we don't have to have this completely nailed down today. We also have a little bit of time, available at the April 15th board meeting potentially, should we need more time for discussion.
Yes.
So,
And the resolution in question today, we can have others weigh in too, but it does not lock us into one or the other scenario here. I think it lists 25 years.
As a not to
As
exceed.
it's more of a not to
type
exceed, so we can always go back and do a 20-year when we actually sell the bonds. So that's the current state of affairs when it comes to the term. Any questions on that point? Kurt?
Question / comment. I was, I think, brought up the life of the stuff that
Yeah.
we're buying, that,
Yeah.
you know. That it's outlasting
Yeah.
the 25-year, but then I look at $11 million of interest,
Yeah.
what we could do with that. I mean, that's,
It's sizable.
if you look at borrowing 40 million, you're paying 20, I mean, we could save.
Yeah.
11 million of that.
Yep.
That's what, now I don't know.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, obviously, there's $23 million worth of interest expense just on the shorter term. To take that to 35 million, pretty dramatic.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sizable
Whether
difference.
it meets the lifetime of the assets or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, and you kind of answered it, was our level of comfort with the $500,000, another 500,000.
Yeah. We have,
And that's, I don't know.
12% more money than paying over 25.
we can show you the multi-year forecast that we were looking at least at a high level. We have the financial parameters that the board has laid out. So it's got debt coverage, it's got debt to assets, days cash. It doesn't really shift those numbers a whole lot in terms of one scenario versus the other here. They're kind of, you know, there's enough else going on that it's not the big swing factor in how those numbers come out. It would just be if there was a particularly rough year at some point, which, you know, we hope when we change products with our Bonneville situation, that doesn't happen very often, but you never know. There could be a time where that $5 or $500,000 difference in annual debt service could make a difference. And, that just, it gives us a little more breathing room, but again, I don't think it's a big enough issue that we couldn't get comfortable with
Either way.
the 20-year, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And a private business has taxes to pay, interest you can deduct.
Yeah,
So you know, there's some tax advantage, if you wanna call it that, by going the longer term, but that's not an issue with them.
yeah,
I lean towards the shorter term myself.
Yeah.
I don't think $500,000 is that much more to pay in the return for what it could save.
Yeah. That's good feedback, that's what we're
Worst
looking for.
case, we can always bump rates. If, look at it the other way, if we didn't borrow this money at all, we'd be raising rates next year to pay for some of this stuff.
It's true, yeah,
If we
That's
don't
very
have to do it for 5 years, we bought a lot of time.
Yep.
If we don't have to do it for 10 years, we bought even more.
Yep.
The financial parameter that I would say this decision has the most impact on is our days cash on hand. Because if we do the shorter term, we are spending cash flow wise about 500,000 more per year. But to Brian's point, there are other levers we can
Yeah.
push and pull.
We did cover some of that risk with the, you know, the term loan. that
Yeah.
Our emergency term loan, there help. De facto be cash on hand if we
Yeah.
needed it.
Yeah.
Not exactly
Yeah.
the same, but it is available and it'll keep us liquid until we gotta do something.
yeah, really for me, the one that I always pay the closest attention to is debt coverage, and I don't think the $500,000 is enough to really swing that too much year to year.
At least given our current,
Yeah.
the current numbers in there, debt service coverage didn't look like.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why you slightly favor?
Well, just looking at, well, the one is just the input from last time around asset life, but understanding 5 years is not a huge issue there. The other one is just the capacity. So let's say in 5 years, we want to borrow for a new facility. You know, having a slightly lower debt service payment would allow some additional capacity for that. That's theoretical though, and I don't know that we should be making decisions on that necessarily, but I can see a need in the future where we want to borrow some more money And not having locked in as high of a debt service at that point could be useful.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about 25 years, we certainly should be thinking about what else is gonna
Yeah.
happen in that 25 years.
So we'll have need for more funds for capital improvement before 25 years. is
Yeah.
up, Or even before
Correct.
20 is
Yep.
up.
And we're gonna have that longer term discussion about how do we fund this capital program into the future. We've got actually the customer survey we talked about earlier this year that we put off because of the high bills. We're gonna be rolling that out, I think next week, is that right?
This week.
This week, okay, so we're gonna try to get some of that feedback in terms of how much should we be rate financing versus capital and debt financing. But that's gonna have to be a discussion. Do we do this every 4 or 5 years? Do we borrow money like this? At some point, that probably becomes unsustainable, so.
But we can't keep doing it faster than we're paying it off,
No.
obviously.
Yeah.
You know, what if, 5 years, we'll figure on 40 million over 5 years and see what that does.
Yeah, and Sarah's got some of those
Debt
things.
service over
modeled.
a 25-year period, say, and see what that shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause we're gonna keep building term payments over time
Yep.
until we start to retire the early ones.
That's right.
We can send you a summary of that. We've been looking at some
We
of
have
those
been.
scenarios that we put in there that assume a borrowing every so
It'd be
often.
interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's gonna get worse and worse for about another, 15 years?
Yeah,
Before it finally starts to go the other way, we retired stuff we already did.
yeah. We'll do a takeaway to get that information out to
How
you.
much of our capital are we paying out of rates now? You think you recall off the top of your head? Is it a third of it, 40%? Some of it's rate based, right?
Well, it's our net income, whatever.
Yeah.
that-
Yeah, I know, that's right.
Yeah,
You're
so
right, You're right, Charles.
last year it was probably 6 million, somewhere in that neighborhood.
There
Yeah,
are too many numbers swimming around.
No, no,
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Six,
I didn't
7
mean to
million.
pull that out of the air, because I know it's hard for all of us to do that, but, so we are already doing some rate-based financing.
Oh, yeah.
We already do that. When I first came on the board, that's all we were using.
Right, I was gonna say historically,
Yeah. And it's gonna be a question of, do we right size the capital program to be able to just rate finance again? That's a lift to be able to get all the way back there. But is there some combination or hybrid?
Theoretically, if we did it all with borrowed money, eventually we're gonna get to the same theoretical rate needs that we'd have. If
Yeah,
cash
over a
flow.
longer enough time period,
Because
yeah.
it's kind of, whatever the sustainable level is.
Yeah.
Doug, I have a question. Where's your head on things compared to 5 and 10 years ago? We're improving. You've seen the end of this in 20 years? I know,
We made,
question, but.
we made great strides over the last 20+ years. And what's nice is I think we're to a point now where if opportunities come up for new areas, we'll be well suited for them.
Meaning we've got the infrastructure to handle the additional load and we could.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anything we do in that regard would be to some extent self-financing.
What kind of, what kind of potential impact would the cottage grove program have?
I think personally, the way that we've described it and the way Chad's talked to us about it, that would be its own separate thing. I think we would, if we do that third option, it would be a new entity that would have its own bonding authority. It would stand on its own revenue. That would be my preferred option.
Yeah.
We would have the option if we wanted to put Emerald's credit rating behind that. That would impact our ability, to spend more on capital projects, but I think a good goal with that whole thing would just make it self-sustaining. That's how we started. We started 100% leverage, right? Nobody,
And it worked.
and it worked. You
Yeah.
just be paid off over
You
time.
think we're worried?
That's right. And so I would hope that we could keep that completely separate.
Question, and this might be for the,
Oh, yeah.
so one of our consultants, but in the current public bond market, what is more attractive to the investors? Is the 20 or 25 year, or is there any difference?
Yeah, Scott Bauer, Northwest Municipal Advisors. So I think it doesn't really matter. There'll be investors at either one, because really you're not looking at a single investor that'll invest in the 20 or 25. It'll be multiple investors that invest, short-term money, mid-term money, and long-term money. So there'll be interested parties all along the way.
But the rates that they're willing to,
Is there like a curve where it's more
Is-
cost effective one way or that's pretty well
will they
priced?
pay a little higher for the 25 than the 20 or
Lower.
Well, yeah, so again, as you go out farther, so as you do go out, and that's reflected there in that lower line there, the all-in true interest cost is reflected of the fact that the money out longer is more expensive. So more of the principal in the 25-year case is out farther at those higher rates. But again, early on, you'll have somebody that's buying, the 1 year, the 2 year, and the 3 year, and whether you're doing 20 or 25, I mean, granted, the principal amount will be a little bit less, but the rate really shouldn't be much different between the 20 and the 25-year buyer in that area. It'll be, again, the fact that you're issuing 25-year bonds and simply those rates are higher than the 20th year rate.
Yeah, I just have a hard time justifying another 12 months.
Yeah,
That's a big number.
Is a big number.
I think we can certainly live with 20-year. I think that's a very reasonable.
I think that's where my head is too.
Okay. Like I said, we don't have to make that final determination, but it's good to know that that's the leading here.
Patty, do you have anything on that?
What's your
Yeah,
thought?
no, I was digesting all this and I agree. It's a lot to difference in the money there. So yeah, 20-year. Yeah.
Good.
20-year.
Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome.
That makes a difference, yeah. Other items, let's see, do we want to talk about the surety or the second rating or any of that stuff?
We can,
Okay.
I don't know if I have any new information to report other than, we are having a call on Thursday related to the idea of whether we're going to go with 1 rating or 2 ratings. So we will have more information on, a recommendation for that piece of things at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have anything new
Okay.
on the surety at
Okay.
this moment.
Okay.
There's somebody arrived.
Oh, that's our next speaker. Yeah, so Scott and his company has been pricing out the cost of the second bond, or second rating
Right.
agency to follow us. And Fitch is the kind of the second one that we would probably look at besides Moody's. It does have
Or
a,
S&P.
yeah, right. It does have a cost to it, so we're trying to understand, what would that do in terms of our rating and is it worth the extra added cost? I think that's what we're gonna review on Thursday.
Correct. And we can definitely give an update after that. We did hear at the last meeting that the preference would be to be looking at a surety as opposed to a reserve account funded by proceeds from borrowing. So we will be moving forward to look at that. And we will keep the board updated on the costs associated with that as well.
I think that is baked into these numbers somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the last thing is just you want to do a real high level schedule.
Yes, sure. We have had a few changes in the schedule. You might have noticed on the cover page, there were a lot of TBDs listed in there and we are working on it. Scott's probably multitasking as we speak and working on it right now. But we are going to end up pushing things out just a slight bit from our original schedule. My guess is that we are probably looking at late to early June.
I think that's accurate, Sarah. I would say probably a late May, early June sale, early June close, so you'll have your money in June.
That's the latest and greatest, but like I said, we are kind of live working on that right now between, I had some vacation, there's conferences coming up, and so we're just looking really hard at schedules, trying to make sure that we can do the best job that we can to present our best foot forward to the rating agencies, while also being efficient with receiving the funding.
I think that still gets us comfortably before the big capital work that we have planned for later in the year too, so. We have some amount remaining in the 21 funds.
We
right?
do, which I need to bring back into the board for kind of a final reconciliation and release of the remainder of those funds.
How much was that about?
4 million and change.
So here's a historical question on that 21 fund.
Mhm.
In general, did we get more or less done than we were thinking?
That's a
Oh,
great question, try to
that's
answer.
Complicated.
It's complicated by the ice storm.
Well,
It
That's-
does.
Well, I was thinking more of the supply chain
Yeah,
issues
cost
we
of
ran
materials.
into.
Basically, all of 2022, we were at standstills, yeah. And then the inflation probably ate into a lot of that. I think we got a lot of great stuff done, whether it was exactly the same level of volume, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think cable prices went up probably a couple dollars a foot.
Everything did.
The cost of estimation went up,
Transformers, poles.
transformers doubled, almost tripled, so it's kind of hard to judge.
Yeah,
And nobody saw that. in 2021.
that's gonna be another point of discussion for a longer term capital spend, is just our cost baseline has gone up so much. The days where we used to revenue finance everything at $6 or $7 million a year, those days are just over. We're gonna have to figure out either a bigger revenue source, revenue financing source, or some type of borrowing to cover the difference. Just to keep inventory in the yards, it's gotten a lot more expensive. Well, did we miss anything related to the resolution? Was there anything that we wanted to share there?
The resolution is pretty meaty. There's a lot involved, and we've got Stacy on the line, who is our best expert. So if there's anything specific about the resolution, that would be a
Seems
great
to
time.
me, the big issues are still, there's really no 20-25 year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
open-ended
yeah,
in the resolution.
it gives us room, yeah. Yeah.
Essentially, it says, go ahead.
Yeah.
It doesn't-
It does. So are you thinking about kind of the difference between, when we did the 2021 borrow, we had all the details, we knew.
I wasn't here, but
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I understand you don't know what the rates are gonna be.
yeah.
yeah,
I
so,
think we'll have a pretty good idea though, we'll keep you posted, the resolution, once it passes, certainly not the end of the road on this thing. So
No.
we'll keep you posted in terms of how these decisions start panning out and allow you to weigh in on things as we get closer to the sale date.
and as far as the term goes, you're right, it does mention a 25-year term, but we're thinking of that as more of a not to exceed. We heard today that we like the looks of the 20-year term, so we'll move forward with our forecasting scenarios and all of our analysis based on that. So,
It's stressful having to sign.
Oh, yeah,
trust me, I know.
you picked the wrong year.
We'll all be in the
Yeah.
We'll all be in the same room signing all this stuff, Kurt.
Yeah, Kurt did it. Yeah. So, yeah, we still have to go through the rating process and all that, so there's gonna be a lot of different checkpoints here. The resolution just kind of keeps the process moving forward. You still have plenty of, if you decide you don't wanna do this, there's nothing that says with this resolution, you absolutely have to move forward, so we'll have plenty of chances to come back. Okay,
All right,
any other questions for Stacy or Scott while we have them?
Ask the right ones.
Yeah.
All right. We hire good partners here, they've been advising us well.
and we have asked them to join us at future board meetings, they have all the
Yeah,
dates,
that's helpful,
so
just to-
we'll try to,
Yeah.
just allow some space at each meeting if you think of, and we can always take questions offline too, if you think of any.
Good idea.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott and
you.
Stacy.
Sorry.
Personnel policy review.
Okay, Alicia's gonna come up and we also have, I think, Jennifer. Did she come?
Yeah, she's on there.
Great,
I was trying to go down, I haven't had a chance to get close.
Jennifer, can you hear Chris okay? Okay.
Jennifer Bowman-Stiegel is our personnel attorney. So she's gonna help kind of go through some of the changes that are included in this update to the personnel policy, the reasons why, and look at it.
Some of you may remember Jennifer, I think, did some training with the board a while ago. Wasn't it like maybe 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Something like that?
A long time ago.
And it was a while ago, so.
We forgot.
She can come back.
Yes, for sure.
But nobody has been harassing anybody in that time period, so it was effective, wasn't it?
As far as we know.
Yeah.
These guys never forget anything.
So, this year, we're doing our annual personnel policy review. This one's a little bit off, the normal timeframe. We had a June one, that went into effect in July because of some changes that we had, regarding the Oregon Family Leave Act. And now this one, we're doing some additional updates. So the timing's a little bit off, but essentially this is just our once a year process to ensure that we are keeping up on the language and complying with everything. So not a lot of changes in this particular one. One of the changes that, and reasons why I wanted to have Jennifer here is there is some language that's been added to this current version that gets to the heart of some of the stuff that's been going on with the National Labor Relations Board, and I'll have Jennifer speak to this a little bit more. But basically, the previous federal administration had, when they came in, made some changes to rules that we're now starting to see impact employers. And we felt like it would be a good time to update our policies to ensure that they demonstrate that we're in compliance and just really clarify what we're doing. So Jennifer's added that in there, different language to demonstrate that throughout the policy. Do you want to talk a little bit about the NLRB stuff that's been going on for us?
Sure. So our dragon that we need to slay is the National Labor Relations Act. That's been in place forever. And that provides all employees, whether they're union or not, private or public sector, doesn't matter, provides all employees with the right to talk about working conditions with other people. And working conditions includes a lot of things: wages, benefits, schedules, equipment, the fact that I hate my supervisor, all of that's considered working conditions. They're allowed to talk about it at work, and they're allowed to talk about it in public, including on social media, and it can be super negative, and we're not allowed to punish them or discipline them for doing it, which makes it very challenging. Now, that's always been the rule, and we've always known that. What changed is the approach. The NLRB decided to look into employer handbooks. And it used to be, at least 10 years ago, we could have one disclaimer in the handbook right at the beginning saying we don't have any intention of applying our rules in a way that would silence or chill any of those conversations. But we do want to require employees to treat each other with respect and dignity. And so we're going to have policies around that. Well, in the last couple of years, maybe 2 years ago, there was an important decision that came out that said that employer handbooks, if all they have is one disclaimer at the front of the handbook, it's not enough. That employees, frankly, don't ever read a handbook. That's not a surprise, everybody. We kind of knew that already. And so the NLRB was requiring that employers spread that disclaimer throughout the handbook, especially in places where employee conversation, employee comments, employee conduct would likely result in discipline, if not termination. And if that conduct, bad behavior, is driven by working conditions, then they shouldn't be fired for it. And employees need to know that. So that's why we've peppered that disclaimer in a couple different places now through the handbook. So now it's compliant with the case law that is out there. In the previous administration, the NLRB was looking at employee handbooks pretty carefully. With the current administration, I don't really see that happening. It doesn't mean it won't, so we just want to be ready. And it doesn't stop an employee from filing an unfair labor practice charge against EPUD. We'll still have to defend it. There's still, the investigator and the arbitrator looking at that. We'll look at this case law that exists. So we need to be compliant, even though, the current administration is changing things a little bit. That's why we made those little changes. Now, one of the situations, I'm going to give you an example, and why that case came about was an employee was very upset. He didn't get a promotion. He didn't get a raise that he wanted. And so he came in and just launched into this profanity-laden, just yelling at his manager. And the manager fired him on the spot for being insubordinate, for losing control, using profanity, being insubordinate. And that kind of started this ball rolling. And the NLRB said, no. He was complaining about wages. He was complaining that wages were unfair. And sure, that's going to make anybody mad. And so you can't fire them if they're mad because they're upset about working conditions. So it's a gray line we're maneuvering. The great thing is EPUD, and under Kyle's leadership and all of his leaders in his team and HR, they're just doing an incredible job fostering this culture of respect and dignity. So it should be an anomaly when somebody loses their cool. And we're still going to keep our policies in there that require people to treat others with respect and dignity. And then we're just going to be mindful if we have to make a discipline move, how serious and how we're going to approach that. But we're not changing the culture. We're just going to make sure we don't step on a landmine. Any questions?
Happens when the NLRB disappears.
Oh, I didn't hear the question.
So what happens if the NLRB disappears?
Oh, I have so many secret voice thoughts
Deep
going
breath, deep
in my
breath.
head right now. But we're on a recorded line,
where's
so I
that?
can't say them out loud. If they disappear, then yeah, those kinds of, the National Labor Relations Act will still exist. They'd have to abolish that as well. So employees would just find another avenue. The NLRB is the one in charge of enforcing that particular act, just like BOLI and the EEOC are in charge of enforcing the Civil Rights Act. But employees will find a way. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But for now, we're just going to throw it in there. Employees are going to ignore it, but we're going to just be mindful of it.
We have the personnel policies scheduled to do an annual review, but that's at a minimum. So if stuff does change, not just with this, but anything else, we always have the ability to do a review and update sooner, which is what we did in 2024 when we had some changes happen to that. Okay, next one, we have some changes in how we are discussing Family Medical Leave Act and Oregon Family Leave Act. Previously, these were really detailed sections in the policy. And we also, in addition to that, had copies of the posters that were required to post. They were in there in addition to our detailed sections, and we just identified the opportunity to not have to repeat that. If it's already in the posters, the information's there, so we consolidated it into one section specific to medical leave. And if I remember right, there's nothing that's changed in regards to the programs, because we caught everything up with OFLA in the June-July update, but just kind of restructuring how we've laid it out in our own policy. Would you agree?
Yep, that's exactly it. We made it shorter.
That was good.
Yeah. People don't read that anyway until they need it. They can look at a poster.
It doesn't happen very often.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, next one, kind of similar, but in the opposite direction. Instead of combining them, we separated them. So we used to have harassment and workplace bullying all in one section. We've now made these two separate sections. And then Jennifer added some language in there that wasn't there before that is specific to public employer requirements. Is that correct?
It's actually specific to all employers.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. I thought it was
Not just public, which is good. But I do want to call out this particular change because it applies to you board members as well. Oregon, a couple of years ago, put in place a new law called the Oregon Workplace Fairness Act. And that's the one that requires companies to have a harassment policy. We already had one, great. But this particular law requires a lot more language in the policy. Ours was good, ours was compliant. And then they did an update to it. And here's what changed. Now, if you are someone who receives a complaint of harassment or discrimination, an employee comes to you and reports it, you are supposed to give them a copy of the harassment policy. It's a weird administrative rule, but there it is. Now, as board members, it's unlikely, but there is a chance that employees could come to you with a complaint of harassment or discrimination.
It's
And
happened.
if they do, you're supposed to technically give them a copy of the harassment policy. Now, more than likely, you're going to say, please talk to HR. Please don't, don't make this my problem. That's your secret voice. Don't say that out loud, but we're going to say, hey, employee, here's the handbook. Look at page whatever. Okay. But that's the rule. So I need you to know just in case somebody comes to you. Now, our policies direct employees to go to HR if they've got issues with their leadership. If there is a complaint about Kyle, close your ears. If there's a complaint about Kyle as the executive director, employees are allowed to come to you as the board. So that's why you need to know if there's a complaint, you need to give them a copy of the harassment policy. Just give them, you can give them the handbook and say, look at page blah, blah, blah. I think,
Question.
Alicia, remind me, are we making this available on your intranet?
Yes, it will be published on the internet, but we have it saved. Well, we can always provide it on the board.
Okay.
I
Go ahead,
think that
Heather.
would be really good. So heaven forbid this actually happens. You can easily have a quick answer, say, yeah, just go to blah, 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 and maybe even have it under the board stuff. So we can just click that button and move on.
There we go. And it can even just be a link. If you
Yeah,
email
exactly.
the employee, here's a link to the harassment policy. Bing.
Mhm.
Easy peasy. All right,
Yeah.
but you knew that is the new requirement, so that's what we added in there. We divided them, by the way, because a lot of employees were assuming the legal standard for harassment also applied to bullying, and bullying isn't illegal. I mean, it's horrible, but it's not actually illegal. So we broke them into two different policies so that employees' expectations are more realistic.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting.
We ever had a
Question.
time where an employee came to the board with a complaint?
What's that?
Have we ever had a time where an employee?
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Long.
Yes, we have.
Well, you were here.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, we've had times where this has been used, this kind of policy.
I know it's starting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
luckily not very recently.
Thank you. Everything.
Hey,
I think we did some work too, specifically to try and guide employees to HR instead of to the board.
Mhm.
I think we added some language in there to try and make sure they weren't just inundating you all with those kinds of concerns. So that's the harassment bullying update.
the next one is specific to part-time employees. We've added some language that will give them the option to bank any hours that they work above their normal schedule, but below the 40, at a 1-for-1 rate. So basically they can either, let's say if their schedule's 30, they work 32, they can just put 32 hours on their timesheet and get paid for that, or they can bank those 2 hours and use them for time off later on. So we've added that in there. Again, it's a 1-for-1 rate. If they work over 40, our normal overtime policies would apply. That's not new, that's always been in place. So anybody who's working over 40 and is eligible for overtime, that would apply. So that's the,
So we've created an additional benefit.
for the part-time employees, allowing them to do that. It's something that we already offer, we're just now extending it to the part-time employees.
Why are we extending it?
What's that?
Why are we?
Just as an
Has it been an
option.
issue?
No, it's just we have 2 part-time employees, and so just giving them that same option to allow them to have that time off option just available to them. Okay. And the next one, so we have a lot of programs now that offer paid and protected leave. So we offer paid leave Oregon, and we also short-term disability. Both of those are offered through we partner with New York Life to provide that. And those offer wage replacement. So if somebody is gone for medical reasons, either for themselves or maybe they're taking care of somebody who needs having a medical issue, they can use one or both of these programs to be gone from work and receive wage replacement while they're gone. What can happen though is it's not a guarantee that it's full wage replacement. So in that case, we have it set up where they are allowed to use their vacation or sick time to help supplement. So try to get as close to what their normal paycheck would be. But when they do that, they're essentially logging time into our timesheet that then generates a paycheck from EPUD. When you get a paycheck from EPUD, that means our normal sick and vacation accrual policies apply. Right now, if they log any amount of time, they get their full accrual rate. So whatever they would get for that 2-week pay period is what they would get accrued.
Even if there's 1 hour.
Double dipping.
1 hour, yes, so Again, yeah, you log 1 hour, you get 3.69 hours of vacation. You log 40 hours, you get 3.69, or excuse me, 80 hours, you get 3.69. So we want to adjust this to prorate it based on the number of hours that they are putting into that pay period. So that just gives us the option to do that when that applies. So that's it. Those are all the changes. I don't know if I put this in here. I don't think I made it stated that we are shooting to have this go into effect within May 1st.
Bring it back in a couple weeks for,
April
A vote.
15th, we would bring it back in for a vote.
thoughts on any of those changes?
Go
You'll
for it.
have the whole thing read in 2 weeks.
It's pretty long.
It's a struggle.
I think we redlined it, didn't we? Hopefully, so
Yeah, I
just
did.
even that though, I know, it's a lot to wade through.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have thoughts between now and then, let us know on any of that. Just,
On the last meeting where you and Kurt were up there, they mentioned something about someone was pushing a bill where they could take the medical leave, Oregon medical leave and use 2 hours here to it. And
Oakwood is talking about that, how it'll allow you to, right now it's a full day, I believe, for paid leave
And the
Oregon.
board is.
They're trying to split it into individual hours.
nightmare.
Well, I don't know. It's.
Well, I'll add a comment there if I
Yeah,
could.
please.
So right now, it seems annoying, but it actually could be a really good thing. Here's why. Your employees are already subject to Oregon Family Leave Act and Federal Family Leave Act, OFLA and FEMLA. Those two are unpaid, but they could use EPUDs, vacation and sick time, short-term disability benefits to cover their time off. Oregon paid leave has to be taken in full day increments. OFLA and FEMLA can be taken in intermittent leave increments, which is partial day shifts. So because paid leave Oregon is full days only, it's creating a situation where employees could take a lot of extra time. I'm going to use my OFLA FEMLA to cover the partial day absences, but I still get 3 months each of those. And then I'm going to use paid leave Oregon to cover my full days. And so it kind of extends out the time I can be out. But if paid leave Oregon goes to partial day absences, then that will run concurrently with OFLA and or FEMLA, okay? Which means shorter times. Employees won't be able to stretch it out quite as long.
That's helpful, thank you.
So yeah, it's actually a good thing, even though it seems like a nightmare to manage, but it's actually a good thing.
Another reason to go with an equivalent plan.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
See where that ends up, I think that's working its way through the legislature.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. Yep. The issue is they're trying to get the software ready to manage that. They don't have their current software can't do partial day absences, so the software.
They have a great reputation.
No problem. We got
Never say software in Oregon.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Alicia.
Yeah.
Lots of traffic.
Okay, next one's the EPA provider
Okay.
choice.
Cruising along, you guys wanna come up?
Yeah,
You're the end of the hour here.
great.
Mitch and Rob fresh in.
He's wired up.
Yeah.
You get any sleep?
No, I don't since you won. Sorry for my parents.
Look the
same to me, Rob.
Your eye looks better.
It looks way better, right?
Oh, yeah, not the rest.
Oh, yeah, feeling good. Feeling good. Oh, yeah, we gotta run this thing. So kind of like last time, I dumped a bunch of information into the memo, right? Just kind of comparing contracts and try to provide a high level overview of the major sections of the contract. It was posted, the template was posted, I think, early March, the second week of March. And so along with that, Bonneville posted a really helpful comparison document showing what has changed between regional dialogue, the contract we're in today, and what's in these new contracts, the provider of choice contracts. So the memo has a lot of detail about those sections, but I just wanted to focus
just quickly on two things. So just really zeroing in on the strategic, some of the strategic implications of those of the new contracts, and just kind of another reminder of the next steps, kind of where we're at in this process and what to expect through the rest of the year. I have to click it through there. Oops. There you go. I didn't do any of that. Let's get through this. So I think one of the biggest ones, and feel free to weigh in, Mitch, if I start nodding off. I think one of the biggest ones is really all about resource elections and these new contracts. We're from the very beginning, unlike in regional dialogue, or back in 2011, we have above high watermark load to serve from the very beginning. So back in the day, we had kind of headroom to grow into, and I don't remember the number then, but we went a number of years before we actually
2015 maybe.
Yeah, so it was about 3, 4, or 5 years where we had headroom and we kind of grew into our tier 1 allocation from Bonneville. At the start of these new contracts, we've got a significant above high watermark loads from the very beginning. So this is one good reason why we've switched the load following product, and we expect that'll be our recommendation for the next contract too. But to serve that above high watermark load with kind of a stable tier 2 resource. One of the interesting things though about this contract and the way that Bonneville has set it up is the election for tier 2 and how we're gonna what we're gonna choose for our tier 2 resource is kind of it's a one and done sort of thing. We get to choose that next summer, and their intention is for it to be kind of active for the rest of the contract. So it's kind of a 20-year choice. There are a lot, I think they have one opportunity.
Yeah, kind of like the product choice itself, you have one opportunity to change your tier 2 election, but there's a time period for that too. It wouldn't be immediate. There's a 3-year waiting period.
There's a waiting period to ease into that, and then if you change it, then there's not another choice, an option to change it.
Are there multiple tier 2 products, or is this a choice between tier 2 and other things?
Yeah, there are different, blanking on what they're calling it right now.
Yeah, there's tier 2 long-term, short-term, and then there's a vintage option.
Yeah, so basically it means like tier 2 long-term is kind of, it's more like tier 1. It's kind of like their surplus, is their surplus power that they might have available, and the short term I think is
It's kind of like almost like making market purchases.
yeah. So there and that one may actually involve an actual resource acquisition where they've got to go supply a tier 2 resource. So there's some choices that we've got to make. We'll come back to the board and talk all about that when it's time to make those elections. But I think the point that we want to get across is that we're making very long-term decision when we do that. And there are some utilities that are still going a different direction than load hauling because of that kind of, they think of that as like a blank check that we're signing away to Bonneville. I want to be upfront about that. Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
So they're saying nothing will change in 20 years.
They're just saying they'll take care of whatever happens. We'll take care of it. And trust us.
But their policy can change.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that are going to change in the first couple of years of the contract, right? We've got the expanded day-ahead markets that are changing. We've got the RAP program that's going to be activated. There's a lot of things, right? New resources that may come online. So there's a lot of things that are going to be changing. But yeah, so I think their answer to this is that they want to fix as much as they can because there is so much changing. They want to make sure that if there are some things that they can fix and set and forget, then let's do as much as that as possible, which I can totally understand from their perspective.
But there is no price guarantee. There's no any of that. It's going to be rate cases every couple of years. Same thing we do today. So you put some faith in them that they're going to have cost on their minds to keep it reasonable.
kind of straying from the script here, but there, Bonneville has long run, a resource program kind of every other year. And I feel like it's been dedicated to somebody in the back desk, right? Like nobody's really, I don't feel like anybody's really cared about that program for a long time. But they continue to crank out these reports. Those things are starting to become very, very important. Like how much does Bonneville, what's going to be on Bonneville's system and what kind of resources do they have to meet that? And they'll be looking at, they won't do the pricing of tier 1, tier 2, but like, do they have enough federal power to kind of meet local growth in the region? So that's another major thing that's happening. And when I think the 2026 is the kind of the next iteration of that. So we've got a slightly longer contract. I think it's 1 year longer than the 1 or 2 years longer than the regional dialogue contract. But again, fewer opportunities for changes. We're in this mode now where we like all this stability, so that's a good thing, but it does reduce flexibility. The way that they're handling a lot of these early changes in the contract is they're going to be doing more public engagement processes and new contract amendments to figure out how are they going to deal with SPP Markets Plus, right? There is no adoption date for that, right? They've just decided that they're going to go in that direction, but there's no date that they've said they're going to do it by this date. And so there's a whole process that we have to go through with Bonneville there. So there's a lot of uncertainty on how that's going to be handled. We've all of the limitations for non-federal resources that are for load following customers that exist today are probably just getting worse in the next contract. So it's expensive to integrate these resources, and it's complex. So we're not really. I think all of that stays the same, and so we're really putting again more of our eggs in Bonneville's basket on kind of meeting our future load needs.
Why is that the case with the non-federal resources? Would they be happy to have extra?
There are some
capacity on the system.
Yeah, you're right. I would think so. There are some things that they've added a little bit of flexibility for. So right now we have to let them, I put this in the memo, but right now we have to let them know for anything on our system that's bigger than 200 kilowatts. So that's a really small number when we're looking to build resources in the region. They're raising that to a megawatt, which is, we think is still a small number, but that gives us a little bit more flexibility to add smaller projects. They're also carved out like a 5 megawatts allowance. So you can actually, you can retain your tier 1 allocation up to 5 megawatts. And anything beyond that, you start to kind of lose that tier 1 allocation. So there is a little bit of flexibility that they've added, but again, I think it's about control for them, making sure that they have the control, they know what's happening in the system.
It is difficult. You think that the incentives they'd want to make, promoting new resource development, it doesn't seem like that's what we got out of this contract. Unless you're a slicer, and then you're subject to all the other risks that we've talked about.
All the other risks involved, yeah.
I think you're gonna see a dramatically lower number of slice customers in this next contract.
Yeah.
All the sites are part of that.
How long is it before people have to, decide, are they gonna be slicer or load following?
It's this summer.
That's
Very
what
soon.
I thought it was coming right up. Okay. Well, that'll be interesting.
I think they will. I mean, there are a couple utilities, them and Cowlitz, they just have very flat loads. So they're mostly industrial. They don't really change. And for them, slice works okay. You don't really manage the risks of the peaks like we have.
Yeah, Idaho Power, Idaho Falls.
Idaho Falls.
Might be another one.
Yeah.
Just
Tacoma,
because
maybe.
I think Tacoma has to because of their balancing authority issues, but.
That might be it though. We're even hearing our neighbors in Eugene are gonna go a different direction.
Yeah, the block with shaping products, another alternative to slice that some slice customers are seriously at.
Do our neighbors in Eugene have to go with the Southwest Power Pool if the rest of us are going that way, if Bonneville's going that way?
Yeah, right. So,
Okay. Good.
I suppose if they're a slice customer, they're not their own balancing authority, so they can't make a different decision like Tacoma or Seattle can.
Uh-huh,
So they're
Okay.
stuck with it, yeah.
okay. That's what I thought, but
Yeah. Everybody got to have their say, one of them made a decision.
Yeah. The last thing we're tracking closely with with input from Chad is the impact of provider choice contracts on annexation efforts. And so I think it's definitely gonna be an uphill battle to try and carve out tier one power for if we were to annex somebody or to there is some provision for the policies. Maybe we talked about it before, but for new publics and maybe this third option that we'll be paying attention to. There isn't anything kind of, I don't know, there's nothing super exciting to say, this is the path that we want to go down, but there's something that we're definitely trying.
In a scenario where we pick up Cottage Grove's load, Pacific Power loses it. Obviously, they'll lose that amount of resident service in exchange for that load, but then we had lost for Bonneville.
I don't know why the treatment is different, whether it's a new thing or an annexation, but they've seemed to draw a line between those. Maybe it has something to do with the Power Act, I'm not aware of, but they've been very clear, it's for new publics only. So we're having to figure out how do we structure ourselves in a way that
Wouldn't
meets
this
that.
hybrid governance model be a new public?
We think it gives us the best chance to, we have to make that case in Bonneville's eyes. Is it arm's length enough?
We don't know if that's an argument we've heard before.
Yeah.
So
Leave it to us to charge.
yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, it gives us some hope, I think, rather than just, and the answer seems pretty clear, no, if it's an annexation.
Those are some highlights. Then in terms of next steps, just kind of laying out. Getting the May workshop, we want to come back. I wanted to include some of the results of the IDEA feasibility study that we kind of contributed financially to and been participating in. We've got some of those results now, but I felt like I have a lot to stuff into this meeting. So we'll be back to the May workshop to kind of go through that stuff. The spoiler here is that pretty much all the costs are the same. And really, again, it comes down just kind of philosophically and qualitatively, like how do we want to approach our relationship with Bonneville? So almost all the costs are identical. I mean, there's definitely movement across them all. But
Yeah, I mean, you can, the costs and the modeling are the same, but I
Right.
would say the certainty is not the same. Yeah.
Volatility, we're still in that scenario, having to budget very highly conservatively, and we're in the same boat we're in today almost.
yeah. So, and then later that month in the May business meeting, we'll come back with a product recommendation, contract request recommendation. So there's this process that we have to go through with BPA to request a product or a contract from them. Then they turn around and give us the contract. So then we'll have like a curing period of a month. And then the June business meeting will come back and ask for a vote on a resolution on that recommendation. And then later, we'll get the contract, we'll review everything, be back for the BPA a bit. And then in October, November, we'll do a contract resolution. And that authorizes Kyle to sign whichever contract, our preferred contract. And then we'll get a signature on it before the 5th of December.
BPA gonna come on site for that?
I think they want to come on site before that.
Oh, okay.
Sometime this summer. I think they're doing a road tour.
BPA roadshow.
They're in sales mode.
They kind of want to get out. We've heard that they want to get out to almost every customer, so.
Last time they came, I think every customer to sign the contract, so.
Yeah, maybe they want to come back with the signature, just a signature, but when I talked to our accountant, we wanted to get out this summer.
That'd be fun.
We'll see.
who is our account rep?
His name's Kevin Mozena.
Evan Mozina, who's been extremely helpful in all of these machinations we've gone through the last couple of years here.
Yeah. We're his favorite customer for sure.
He's great, yeah.
Love that.
So this contract would take effect 2028, right? So in the interim.
Yeah, so we're in this 3-year rate period. Right. To end the current contract, the regional dialogue contract, and so power deliveries start on October 1st, 2028, and these new contracts.
But the product switch happens this October.
Yeah, you're right.
But we actually,
Yeah.
So we're actually gonna get 2 new contracts in the next
Right.
3 years.
That's true. We're gonna have to sign a new load following contract too.
Yeah.
That'll have to come in here. You'll probably be seeing that.
Yeah, you can get here twice for.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's right. In the June, isn't it like middle of June that we have to provide the
Yeah,
letter?
yeah, we might be a week late,
Okay.
but it's fine. It's it's just their preference to get it in before 6 days.
It's like a suggested deadline, more than like a hard, if you don't get it in by now, you don't get a product.
It's just the way our schedule works out.
Any other updates or questions? We'll talk about the product more next month and we'll have those results to share about the Idaho study that was done. It doesn't, in my mind, change things a whole lot, so nothing major to expect.
This will start in 28. So what about the piece between the 27th when we gotta shut Sharp Mountain down?
So that'll be accommodated. When we shut it down, we'll be purchasing tier 2 power, additional tier 2 power from Bonneville, in the interim. And that'll shift as of the new contract date, that will tier 1.
Good.
That date, they did, I sent the letter out to everybody on that. Good news that we got the $13.7 million presentation that Rob gave, so that was great.
He looks tired.
But they did set a date that's a little bit closer in. It was December 2027 to have this shut down, so it's something we're gonna have to keep in mind. We're working with the folks at the landfill. We believe we got plenty of flexibility with the flare out there if we have to bridge the gap to some degree.
Just like the engines run.
I don't know what Bonneville wants to see in terms of decommissioning. If they want to come out here, you know, hit it with a hammer or something and see. if it's not working.
out.
Give visual evidence.
Field exhaust.
Field exhaust, that's it. Put an exhaust monitor on it.
Yeah, somehow we'll have.
I mean, they
certified.
have their own meters out there, so maybe they'll want to pull their meters.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know.
We'll make sure we're getting the letter of the law.
Yeah.
Thank you
Any
guys.
questions? Yeah, all good.
A lot more that's coming in, so.
Thanks,
I guess
Rob.
I didn't realize we were gonna have to bridge the gap.
Yeah, yeah.
10 months.
Well, no, that's gonna be a longer, well, actually, right, yeah, so we'll shut down, yeah.
October 28th.
Yeah, it depends on.
Well, it's no worse we're spending to make power there now.
Yeah, it's roughly cost equivalent.
It'd be 60, yeah, $60 to $70 for tier 2, but that's not what we're spending for.
Yeah.
Today.
Hopefully we get the project done by then, actually.
Yeah, I mean, because
High
it's
school.
earlier.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Don't wait for the county.
Next is our grant funding agreement review.
All right, let me give you the updates here. Tyler's with me. You wanna come up?
Sure.
You got some information? Okay. Let me go through this real quick and then I'll let everybody ask questions and we can see where we're at. Some of the latest developments are not super positive, I will say, for the solar project. So we'll talk about what that looks like. First of all, I'll just start with that particular one. There were 2 agreements that I put in the packet that we would need to have signed to make this happen. The first is just a very small change with our grant agreement with the Department of Energy, just changing the location and a couple other details, so not a big modification there. The second, though, is a brand new lease agreement. So this was a modified version of what we sent to the county previously. We've now changed it so that it reflects the fire district. We simplified it to some degree, so it's a shorter agreement now, but the provisions that were in there, just to review, and then we've got some updates in terms of what the fire district is telling us. First of all, 30-year lease, one-time 10-year renewal option. We install the solar array and the battery system, provide gravel cover and a chain link fence, and then the fire district would be responsible for maintaining the grounds for the length of the term after that. We also proposed the fire district to have the cleaning of the panel responsibility. We'll see, they're not thrilled about that. We also have the right to get to the system to make repairs and all that, that's kind of standard. Fire district would receive 22% of the project output as bill credits. I think with the county it was 30+% previously, so that's down a little bit. The remaining output would go toward low income customers, and our staff would try to include as many prepaid costs. So there's gonna be things that, we know the inverter, for instance, has to be replaced after a certain amount of time typically. And we would have as part of the RFP go in and say, give us a bid to just include that in the project cost. Have that covered through the upfront cost of this whole thing. So those were the provisions that were in the agreement that I sent out to all of you. Let's talk about, let's see if I have this. I guess I missed that one. So I'll have maybe Tyler explain where the fire district is at on all of these. They haven't taken it to their board yet, I don't think.
Next week they will.
Next week.
Yeah, and so I think part of that is gonna be asking for their permission to clean the solar panels. And it doesn't seem like that's gonna be something they wanna do, which is totally understandable. But we've asked them to do that as well as vegetation maintenance. So I've been talking to our solar contractor and he's going, well, that's in a floodplain there. And if you're putting 5 inches of gravel, there's a good chance they're not gonna allow it, which means they wouldn't wanna take on the vegetation management. So it's kind of up in the air here on how things are gonna play out, but ultimately.
About that, what's,
Yeah,
where that drains.
it was wet a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that makes it, it's kind of up in the air where that goes, but as far as, ongoing maintenance, solar panel cleaning is probably something that is, they're not gonna accept. We'll see next week, but additional things to think about is, after talking with Rob Roeder, we're gonna have a battery out there it's gonna be connected. There's gonna be firmware updates, software, things they're gonna, take staff time, things like that. And
You wanna talk about the battery replacement too?
yeah, 10 year, I'm assuming they're gonna want us to remove our battery, so it's got a 10-year warranty, it's not the full 30-year contract, so. They're gonna have to ask their board also, like, when we pull their their diesel generator out and put this battery in. 10 years from now, they're gonna be responsible for adding brand new backup power to the facility. So that would be an additional cost for us to go out there and pull it out and they would have to replace it. So that's another kind of wild card on whether or not they want to, if they see a benefit for this whole project to put a brand new generator out there after it's all done.
Are we making them take the generator out or put solar in?
No, they can. It's tight on room. It's sitting on a pad right now and it really does need to at least be moved. So there's some details to work out there too.
I think that generator is getting moved as well.
Yeah. Most likely. We did talk to the state also about whether we can use any of the upfront money for some kind of reserve fund to help with maintenance or other things over time. Sounds like the answer there is no. I don't know what your conversations were.
Yeah, the answer was no, and their theory or their thought was, they're helping construct this array that's gonna help give us kilowatt hours. And so they're thinking, well, with those kilowatt hours, that's the benefit you get, and you gotta pay for maintenance. And there's a lot of different little maintenance things that are gonna be continuous here. For this particular project, it's estimated that, you're gonna have 260 panels that are gonna be going to low income. That's gonna, at today's rates, it's gonna offset about $20,000 a year. That's the benefit to us year one. For that, we've got these little maintenance things that we may need to either have us do or have the fire district do. So I think that's kind of where we're at, is figuring out.
How hard is it to clean those panels?
I've scrubbed the ones up here. It's like washing a car.
There's two contractors in the valley.
Yeah, I saw that
And
list.
how often do they have to be done
I
annually?
think we do it once a year, probably.
A good example is Saginaw West. Go look at that.
Yeah.
It's bad. No one's cleaning it. There's no contract. You can't even, it's probably putting out 20% less than what,
So
it's,
you gotta keep up with it.
what's next to the highway? It's always dust.
Yeah.
It's,
Vegetation management and control costs you $5,000 a year.
Right. Yeah.
I know about things like this, it's crap work, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler, you mentioned something that made me think, like, do those solar panels, like their efficiency, does that decrease over time? So
Yeah,
the kilowatt hours that they produce over that 30-year time.
it's pretty
period
small. I
would
think it's
eventually-
0.5% a year or something like that.
So over 20 years, that's.
Yeah.
that's what we have to-
Yeah.
How much was it, 22% is gonna be their load? Is that gonna cover their load?
Yeah, so 22% of the system is gonna offset their main headquarters on Marcola Road. It'll offset 100% of their average usage out there. That's the idea.
So when you're talking to them, you might say dirty panels don't produce the electricity, the clean ones do, and they get 22% of whatever's produced.
Yeah,
So
Right.
really,
Yeah,
you keep them clean, you give
there is an
them.
incentive, yeah.
Right.
So, but I have a bunch of questions, so.
Sure.
I watched a deal the other day on YouTube, and the guy in Massachusetts was talking about the real world with solar on his house. They pay 30 to 35 cents a kilowatt hour in Massachusetts for power, so obviously there's some advantages. At 9 cents, I think this is a waste of time. I've always said that, and I'll still say it, it's gonna end up being a money hole.
Kurt, go ahead.
So. We have $838,000. So do we have an estimate of what, I assume had one for Short Mountain.
Right.
It didn't have almost 900 feet of chain link fence.
Yeah.
With at $50 a foot. So that's $43,000 worth of fencing at least.
Right. Yeah,
Or more. It doesn't have, that didn't have a gravel surface. It didn't have fabric.
Yep.
I'm assuming no prep work. You go out on that grass and lay out
yeah.
some great fabric and rock, and that's another $45,000.
It's a good question. I actually talked to him about this. I said, this is gonna be a lot cheaper, right? Well, it is, well, it's gonna be cheaper because on this, in Short Mountain landfill, they had to pour slabs for every post to go in. It's sitting on garbage. So it was gonna be super expensive for them to do that, to build the infrastructure there. And now they don't have to do that for this, so.
Some kind of concrete
Yeah.
post hole.
Yeah, it's just not in any way the same amount. I think they were gonna go down like 2 or 3 feet and there was some additional engineering that was
So
required.
do we have an estimate of what we're going to spend? Is my bottom line. Do we have?
Yeah,
So if we tell them they're gonna get 400 panels and all of our prep costs, well, the only variable in this I see are the number of panels.
We're out of money, we can't afford all the panels.
So
Well,
that,
I don't know if we have extra 200 grand in there or what the 838, I don't,
yeah,
yeah, the RFP would be, this is our top number we're looking for. We're looking for this system and this is the budget here, and so not to exceed.
they would essentially scale the project size to match whatever budget is left after all these things that you brought up. So it does start to eat in significantly to the panels.
and there's also, I don't know what our insurance costs to insure it. The cost of removal.
Yeah.
And there's a conflict. I know you've had your attorneys go through all this stuff.
Yeah.
So section 5.2, EPUD may abandon upon expiration of the lease.
Right.
Section 13.1, EPUD will remove all improvements at the end of the lease. That's way different.
Yeah.
That could be remove all the rock and fabric and put a
Yeah, you're right.
mobile field back.
In 30 years, that'll cost 3 times what it costs to build it today.
Yeah.
So there's some big questions I have, and
Those are good. good
I'm
questions.
starting to think that
Would be money ahead to give it to the low income people, money to insulate their homes.
Yeah,
They're going to do this,
I think.
or to buy a cheaper.
I think what we hope to do was to contain the ongoing costs of this, and it's gonna be difficult to figure out how to do that. Especially if the fire department doesn't wanna take on some of the maintenance that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little side note, he's now the cafe owner at Manchester Bay. He I think he said he made a whole bunch of money in California. All he did was maintain rooftop solar, like on Walmart's, and these big companies had contracts with Walmart to install these rooftop solars and maintain them. They just walked away from it. They quit paying him.
You'd be surprised how many solar projects are like that, where
they're not
They get the
getting,
credit
Well,
for
they
it.
get, yeah, they get put in and they don't get maintained.
right, they get the
And it was a
federal
bad
credit,
contract, no teeth.
Yeah,
right, they get the,
Yeah.
that's what it's,
that is the danger with these.
There's a solar plant up next to a place I did business with briefly, but not often, in the North Valley. And they were joking about how it keeps changing hands, and I go, why is that? And he goes, well, because one member of the family owns it for a couple of years, and they get their subsidies. Then they sell it to another member of the family, and they get the subsidies, and they sell it to a third member of the family.
Yeah.
They get their subsidies, they're laughing about it.
Oh, yeah.
Every 2 years, they got a new landlord there, you know, and it's all just a big fat game.
Yeah. Well, all those are valid concerns.
We're not allowed to do anything else with the money, right? It's solar or nothing. Is that how it is? It's a
That's,
solar grant?
that's the proposal they've
battery, yeah.
accepted, yeah,
Or nothing, unfortunately.
yeah.
and just the. So in your RFPs, there's some solar company's gonna say, okay, we'll replace the inverters every 10 years.
Yeah,
Well, 5 years, they don't exist, sir. I
yeah.
just had that with some windows, lifetime warranty.
There you go.
And the company did, they did furnish the new windows, but the company that put
They're
it in
gone.
didn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's a risk, and as much as we'd like to contain this, there's probably gonna be costs that input has to pick up at some point. So that's just full awareness, that's something that the board should.
Where did that leave us now? Do we have to vote on this again?
Well, we would have to vote on the agreements, we don't have them up for a vote today. My recommendation would be to let Tyler finish these conversations with the fire district, we can fill you in on the results of those on April 15th, and then we can figure out which way you wanna go.
Right.
And if the answer is no, no hard feelings from the staff, we understand, we've tried to make this work,
Well, the stuff we're bringing up is definitely what kills projects like this. If we're gonna do this, we want it to be a
Right.
success.
yeah. Understandably, the fire district doesn't wanna take on the big liability either, and so they're trying to protect their interests. Ultimately, it's up to y'all whether you want to take that risk that you'd like it.
What kind of permitting?
There's electrical and structural, and then there's like the floodplain.
That's gonna be
delineation
tough
work,
work.
that's a wild card on how long that's gonna take, so.
Quick aside, I just read today briefly, I didn't read the whole thing, but in Spain, the way the government entity works there, they wanna pull out 100,000 olive trees on a couple of hundred different olive farms that have been in for hundreds of years. Put solar panels and wind generators on them. The farmers are screaming, hollering, and nobody gives a rat's rear end about it. They're gonna bulldoze all those trees. It's just amazing the thing going on with this.
Yeah.
It's so land intensive.
It is,
I think it was Massachusetts.
People have no idea how land intensive this would really be if it was 40%.
Oh, it's huge. Drive to Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, as far as you can see. There was a governor in, I think it was Massachusetts that wanted to mow 286 acres of park. To put up a solar. It's like,
Yeah, it really is something.
one thing, if we had a good solar resource here, that'd be one thing, but we're talking about, again, 9%.
Well, I was gonna say, Western Oregon.
Yeah,
Well, it's not, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
There's a benefit to the fire district,
Yeah.
and there's a benefit to our low income customers. And if we can see a way to answer these questions about ongoing upkeep, then let's address them, and that's not just. This is not how we approach the other things we do at EPUD, we say, it looks too complicated, screw it.
yeah. We'll get the answers and bring it back to you.
these are the questions right there.
Well, I have one last thing I'll add. Charles, it's not a benefit if it costs us taxpayers and we're getting more money than it produces in electricity. That's the bottom line.
I hear that, but somebody's gonna use that money.
That doesn't make it right. Enough said, I'll shut up.
Appreciate everyone's view on this, I know there's different opinions, so we'll try to get the information back in front of you, that will make it call. Last one I'll just mention is the other agreement that we have in here is work with, through the county. Emerald and Sub are working on this jointly, Rob's been tuning in with me. It's focused on resilient local energy planning, so there's staff from the national lab is going to be looking at load details, where we have resources today and what we might be able to put here in Lake County to avoid some of the situations we have during major weather events. Very little risk or frankly investment for us here. It's just staff time. Over the next 3 years, we'll attend quarterly meetings to be able to weigh in on this stuff. We do get reimbursed up to a little over $100,000 for our time on this one. So I think this is a reasonable one for us to put our foot into. The hope is longer term, this actually turns into some funding for actual resources that we can purchase and help with. Part of this was entered into back when it was, we thought, helpful to collaborate with a few of these partners that we hadn't been doing a lot of that with. So I would like to see this one out for that reason, if nothing else, but it's also a good chance to help shape maybe some future resource development here. Questions on that one? This one is an awful agreement. It's about 400 pages. I didn't put all of it into the packet. It's a federal agreement, so you can imagine, Chad and I were laughing. We had provisions in there that we can't participate in, all kinds of, illegal activities, whether it's drug trafficking or whatever it might be. So we're signing up for all that stuff, but that's what you get when you work with feds.
They have fixed reimbursement rates, or can we just?
Yeah, I think they've allocated us a certain part of the amount of the grant. There's a schedule in there that shows quarterly how much we're eligible to get. And I think we just have to show evidence that we participated in time. If there's no questions on this one, I'll bring it back for a vote on 15. Okay, thank you all. We'll get more information on the other ones. Thanks, Tyler.
Any, items for action, motions or resolutions? Resolution 2025-06. Supplemental bond resolution authorizing the issuance of $40 million principal amount electrical system revenue bonds.
Assume y'all can read that up there.
No problem. Even though I could read it, I couldn't understand it.
So again, this is the next step in the process here. This does not commit us to moving forward. We have really anytime up until the bond sale, we can pull back. But this allows us the authority to continue forward here and to make this bond issue happen.
So this is just a legal coup, basically.
Yeah, we did the first resolution back in April, or was it March?
And we had
It was,
a public
sorry.
comment.
Yeah, one of those.
Way back, over a month ago.
It became, actually, the ordinance was in February.
That's right.
And then it takes 30 days to become effective if there are no election referrals, which there were not. So March 20th was the effective date. If there were no election referrals.
So this is from Stacy, our bond counsel, to specifically describe more what we're going to be doing when we go out there to issue bonds. And this is a necessary step, but it's not the end step to making this happen.
So we need to take a vote on this, correct?
Yes, yep.
I didn't know we could take a vote during workshops.
Well, we don't have to, so we can do this today or we could do it on the 15th. It wouldn't necessarily impact the timeline either way. We don't like.
I'm fine with it. I just,
Yeah, Patty, I don't typically like bringing stuff in, but we can take votes in workshops. It's just not the typical.
Right, okay. Well, I move we accept resolution number 2025-06 to move forward.
So we have a second. Is there any further discussion? So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. That's a big vote. And again, it'll be Kurt's name on it, so appreciate it.
How much is your house worth?
You better be there that day, Kurt.
Asking to bring the title to his pickup.
Okay, so is there any public comment? I don't know.
We gotta review first.
Do a motion?
I mean,
Review motion.
we do that.
And the motion to approve resolution 2025-06, supplemental bond resolution authorizing the issuance of a $40 million principal amount electric system revenue bonds. That was unanimously approved.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
I see no members of the public.
None?
Nobody's interested in this.
Okay. So now we will adjourn to non-public executive session.
Before we do, while we're still in session here, I need to, I'm gonna recuse myself from voting on performance review and the compensation package. For several reasons, but I am.
Okay.
I had legal counsel.
As you wish.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Pretty much. I get out early.
We were gonna disregard whatever you say.
But I will comment, I did read the comments and I agree 100% with them.
Are you thinking?
Yeah, I know,
Did you decide you're not gonna participate in the discussion here?
it's up to, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, however you wanna do it.
Sure.
The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602I, which allows the governing body to meet in executive session to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of a public officer. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will adjourn the meeting.
Look at you guys getting
We're all
all
set.
set.
I didn't cook it.
Yeah, we kept the agenda on.
Make them all.
If nothing else to come, you
There's
can.
nobody here, so.
Thank you for taking the time to do this, I appreciate it.
Close the executive session.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you, yeah. Thank
So the
you.
executive session is now closed,
And the meeting.
and we're back to public meeting. You can start the recording. She did it.
It's recording.
We now close the executive session, return to the public meeting, and the public meeting is now adjourned.
Perfect. Blow this pop